This is how you use the clone stamp tool in Photoshop. To begin, the clone stamp tool is over on the left side in your tools, and it looks like a little stamp. You can also press the letter S on your keyboard, and it's like a brush. So you can use your bracket keys, right bracket and left bracket, to make it bigger or smaller. Additionally, like a brush, you can change the hardness of the edges. A really good idea to help you blend, and I'll show you some different times when you'd want to use a harder brush or a softer brush. And what it is used for is covering things up in a picture or bringing things into a picture that weren't there before. So, for example, let's say on this picture of the forks, I decided for some reason that this stamp on the back of the fork is distracting. So I'm going to use my clone stamp tool, and I'm going to make a sample of what I think should be in this location. So if I look at it, towards this end it should be a darker color, and then over here it should be more of a gray. So I'm going to bring my brush in here, or my stamp, and I think it's a little too big. I think at this point that I want a medium hardness brush, which is about where I am, and you can see, try it out and see how it looks. And before I stamp, I like to do this on a duplicate layer. So I'm going to press Ctrl J on the keyboard so that I have a layer 1 with all my edits, and that way I can turn it on and off and see how I like it. So I'm going to bring this brush in nice and close, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key on the keyboard. My brush turns into a different shape, and then I'm going to click one time, and what I've just done is I made a sample of that exact spot in the picture, so that now as I move my brush around, this is what I'm going to be stamping, is this gray color that's right here. You can see now my stamp is a grayish color instead of the yellowish green it was before. So what I can do is bring it down and start covering up that picture, or the text that was there. Now at some point it starts to look really fake because you can see my circles here. So the clone stamp is a tool that's really easy to use, but also really easy to make it look bad. So you want to be careful, and every so often make yourself a new stamp. So I'm going to zoom in closer, and I'm going to make a stamp of this shadow area to try to blend in here a little bit better. Maybe if I zoom out, I really can't see it too much, but you have to be really careful with the stamp so that you don't see your repetition or the repeated spots over and over. It's not too bad. I could also use a clone stamp if I have dust on my sensor, or like there's something that's sticking out in the picture, like this tiny little spot. It's really not too bad, but I can easily stamp over it. So Alt, click, and now I have a stamp of this dark gray background, which I can cover up just like that. So if I zoom out, I can turn this layer on and off, and you can see before and after. Okay, I'm going to show you on one other picture. This is a picture that we took up in Sequoia National Park. This is my family and I. What if, for some reason, you decided you wanted to take something a little bit more serious out of a picture? So not just a little bit, but now I'm going to take out people, and this is our camera bag here, and I just want this to be just a landscape. So I'm going to duplicate my layer again, Control J, and I'm going to zoom in here first because this part's going to be easier. I'm going to take out this camera bag. So I'm going to make a new stamp. You can see that my stamp is still gray from that other picture. So Alt click in the grass. And you want to go kind of close to try to match the shadowing and match the exact lighting and what should be there. Starting to restamp the backpack, so that's no good, so it's time to make a new stamp. And maybe my stamp is too fuzzy, so I'm going to go into the hardness and I'm going to make it a little harder. Alright, maybe my brush is too big. Oops, accidentally stamped an extra leaf in there. I think I'm going to make it a little smaller using the brackets on the keyboard. You don't want to go too small or you'll see every little circle that you are stamping. If you start to see some repetition, like I feel like I'm seeing this shape multiple times there, because I've stamped a bunch of times, then you can cover up that repetition by just changing one or two of them, and it starts to look more believable. So there, the backpack is gone. And if I wanted to take us out here, I'm not just covering with grass, but I also would need to cover with this bush that's back here. So I have two different textures, and one way to do that is when you make your brush, overlap both of the things you're stamping. So I'm going to hold down Alt and click here. So now I have a brush that's about half of the bushes and half of the grass. So if I go over this direction, I can kind of line it up. But I don't want to use that same spot of the bushes too many times. So now I think I'll come over here and make a new stamp. Okay, so now we're headless people. Now I just need to cover us up with grass. However, you can probably now see this repetition here of this shape. Now that you're studying clone stamping, you're going to start to see bad photoshopping in pictures in the media. Just go ahead and take care of this with a little repetition, or reducing the repetition by taking one of them out. It looks a little more believable. Okay, I'm going to cover the rest of us up with grass. Alt click. Now if you start to clone stamp too many times in a row, you are really going to see that repetition. This is bad clone stamping right here. So I'm going to back up a little bit. You can just see that same spot of grass over and over and over. So you want to do just one or two clicks and then make a new stamp. One or two clicks, make a new stamp, and continue to cover up. Changing the size of your brush, maybe changing the hardness of your brush if it doesn't look good for your picture. Sometimes a bigger brush is easier. Sometimes a smaller. Really depends. And if you start to be stamping something that you don't want to be stamping, then you just need to make a new brush. All right, so there you have it, the layer on and off. Normally you won't be taking something so serious out of a picture. It'd be something much smaller like sensor dust, or just like a stray hair, or somebody had a little stain on their shirt. That's more realistic clone stamping. But be very careful, because you don't want your clone stamping to show. It should look as natural as possible.